Tell Us About Yourself is sponsored by bonusround.ca, streaming Canada's classic game shows on demand. Dive into the golden age of television with thousands of episodes of Canadian series that defined an era from anywhere in the world, all for just $1.99 a month. From iconic shows like Let's Make a Deal and Definition to cult classics like Bumper Stumpers and The Mad Dash, bonusround.ca brings you timeless entertainment that's fun, enlightening, and affordable. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, relive the magic of Canadian television history. Subscribe now at bonusround.ca for $1.99 and turn every night into Game Show Night. By Game Show Forensics. Join host Robert McKee and his crack team of forensic game show scientists as they take you on the deepest dives imaginable in a quest to analyze the most detailed minutia of game shows nobody else dares to, or cares to, investigate. Nothing is too whimsical for examination, no semantics too absurd for the research extremists at GameShowForensics.com. Parental discretion is advised. And by The Inn at Leola Village. Nestled in the heart of picturesque Pennsylvania, the Inn at Leola Village is a sanctuary of luxury and relaxation. Indulge in the timeless beauty of their historic suites, each meticulously designed to transport you to a bygone era of elegance and grace. Experience the culinary delights of their award-winning Italian restaurant, where every dish is a masterpiece crafted from the finest local ingredients. From romantic getaways to corporate retreats, the Inn at Leola Village offers a haven for every occasion. Unwind at the spa, stroll through the lush gardens, and let the stress of everyday life melt away. Make your reservation today at theinnatleolavillage.com or call the front desk at area code 717-656-7002. The Inn at Leola Village, an oasis of luxury. Tell Us About Yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is produced in partnership with the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, one of the largest history museums in the United States, and one of the leading museums serving families with highly interactive exhibits and programs. Since 1968, the Strong Museum has been dedicated to exploring the ways in which play encourages learning, creativity, and discovery, and how it illuminates cultural history. And their National Archives of Game Show History. Founded by industry veterans Bob Bowden and Howard Blumenthal, the archive is home to thousands of artifacts representing over 80 years of broadcasting, including props, set designs, video interviews with game show professionals, and other iconic elements from the history of television at play. For more information about the National Archives of Game Show History or the Strong National Museum of Play, visit museumofplay.org or call area code 585-263-2700.
Blue 35.
Tell us about yourself, would you?
Tell us something about you.
For any new viewers, why don't you tell us again about yourself?
We've met before, but let's meet again. Tell us about yourself.
What else can you tell us about yourself?
Perhaps you'd fill us in again and tell us about yourself.
Red and white. Correct. Some Enchanted Evening is a song from what
South
music?
Pacific.
Correct. PU is the chemical symbol for what?
Plutonium.
Correct. The zebra is a member of what animal family?
Horse.
Correct. London Dry is a type of what spirit?
Gin.
Correct. In what century was Big Ben built?
19th.
Correct. Parnu is a city in what Baltic state?
Estonia.
Correct. Who is the Queen's third child?
Prince Andrew.
Correct. Oh, unbelievable. With 39 seconds remaining, she just snatched it away.
I don't think I was even going at top speed.
Well, top speed or not, can anyone slow?
My name is Anne Hegerty. I am British, as you can hear. I am the Governess on The Chase UK, which started in 2009. I joined in 2010, and I was the first ever female chaser on any version of The Chase.
I noticed that you started a little while after the original sort of batch of chasers. Was that in response to, because I know that in England, they were trying to get more female participants on panel shows and on quiz shows, because I think that it had been noticed that there was a sort of lack of that representation on that type of TV.
Yes, I think that's something that British TV has been trying to do for quite a long time. I believe about 20 years ago, there was an occasion that we have an extremely prestigious individual quiz show called Mastermind on TV. And there was one year when something like 25 women auditioned and 24 of them got off. I mean, they were practically pulling them off the streets. So that's not to insult anyone who got on. I can't remember what year it was, and they may well be very, very good, and they may well be my friends. Around about late 2008, they started devising this show called The Chase. Actually, it might have been a little earlier than that. And when trying to locate chasers, they knew they wanted a female one, and they just couldn't find one they thought was right. I had not yet learnt that there existed a high-level quizzing circuit in the UK. So I kind of wasn't really on the scene. The only thing I was doing was occasionally socializing with other people who'd been on Mastermind, which wasn't really as central to UK quizzing as I thought it was. So when The Chase originally filmed in early 2009, it just had two chasers, which were Mark Labette and Sean Wallace. And it was only 10 episodes. So we're like, let's just simply do this as a little pilot show. And if it gets picked up, then we'll have another look for some more chasers. And just about the time they had finished recording it was when I came on the scene. That was when people started sort of pointing at me and saying, do we think that might be our female chaser? The one we couldn't find before because we didn't know she was around.
Well, how did they find you? If you weren't involved in that high-level quizzing circuit, which it seems like a lot of the chasers from the show around the world come from that sphere. Yeah. How did they track you down?
What happened was I was on Mastermind in late 1987. And when you join Mastermind, you get to be, when you've been on Mastermind, you get to join a thing called the Mastermind Club, which is essentially really much more of a social club than actual quizzing. And most of the people in it are about 20 years older than me, and I'm not young. But I assumed, this was where all the quizzers hung out. And we used to have meetings, those of us who lived in the Manchester area, which I do, although I mostly live down south now. We used to have meetings every second Wednesday of the month in a pub in central Manchester. And the thing is, it was kind of grinding to a halt. After the show was brought back in 2003, the new producers didn't really liaise with the Mastermind Club anymore, so they were not putting new members through. So the Mastermind Club was kind of ossifying, and we'd run out of things to say to each other. So one of our numbers said, look, could I invite some Mensa friends, who would be on the same kind of page as us? So we said, yeah, that's fine. And then April 2009, one of her Mensa friends came along and she told me about the quizzing circuit, which I didn't know existed. She gave me the website details, and I signed up, and I went along to the next quiz, which was in Liverpool, about 30 miles away. And I did pretty well at that quiz, although I found it very tough. But B, the other thing that happened was that there was a crew there from the BBC who were auditioning for the second series of a show called Are You an Egghead? Because the only show we had at that time that actually used professional quizzes was one called Eggheads, which is still running. And the previous year, they had done a competition to find a new egghead, and now they wanted to do another one. So I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool to be an egghead because they get paid and everything. So
Sure.
I took the audition, passed, and then it was a series of several heats, and I got through to the semi-finals, and then was just narrowly knocked out. So essentially, I came third because it was the second semi-final. And what I didn't realize is the quizzing community that I finally discovered is actually quite small and incestuous, and everyone knows everyone. And even though that it wouldn't be shown for another 6 months, word was getting around. Who is this woman who's just come third that we've never heard of? And she was at the last quiz, and she did okay. And who is she? So the following month, I didn't know people were saying this, but the following month I went along to the British end of the World Championships, did pretty well in that. And then, as I've said before, I thought I'd go to the bar and get a drink. And I step inside the bar and I am greeted by what I've described as the largest man I've ever seen in my life, who says, "Hi, my name's Mark Lebet. You beat me last month. Who are you?" And we chatted, and he said, "I've just finished making the pilot series of a little show called The Chase, and you should watch it. It's going to be really good." And I did watch it. And then the following month, the woman who runs the quizzing circuit said, "What do you think about being a chaser? Because if it gets picked up for a full series, we'll have your name put forward." And basically that's what happened. And I went through, I think, about 4 auditions. And that's how it happened. So I kind of walked into this community and swiped a plum job from under everyone's nose. So I've always tried to be terribly nice to the quizzing community because I feel like I can't afford my enemies. Hasn't always worked.
I think that's probably a good strategy. And in the process of doing these interviews for this podcast, I've heard so many variations of being in the right place at the right time. And I think that it's something,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I've always said if I hadn't gone to that mastermind club meeting in April, if I just decided not to go, it's an absolute sliding doors moment because I wouldn't have met Margaret. She wouldn't have told me about the quizzing circuit. I wouldn't have gone along to that quiz. I wouldn't have done Are You an Egghead? I wouldn't have got tapped up for the Jace.
sure. It all falls in line like dominoes, doesn't it? It just,
Yeah,
again,
it
just being
does.
in the right place at the right time. I
Mm.
had the pleasure last year of talking to Mark Lebet for this podcast, and he talked
Oh, yeah.
about we talked about his introduction to the chase and how he
Mm-hmm.
became a chaser, and that
Uh-huh.
the chasers are characters for TV, and they're not always one-to-one representations of how they are in real life. We talked about how
Mm.
he developed his character of the
Mm.
Beast, and he mentioned professional wrestling, that was a huge
Yeah.
inspiration for him in developing that persona. When you think about your development of your character for the chase as the governess, who
Mm.
comes to mind as somebody who may have served as an influence for that character?
I had a horrible, violent grandmother and a horrible, violent aunt. So both of them I've kind of drawn on. I had a much nicer but very strict headmistress who was probably coming useful. Originally, the governess was going to be a little different. She was going to be more sort of creepy, um, more, I don't know, people. I remember some American commenter a couple of years ago describing my character as resembling McGonagall from Harry Potter. And I think
Really?
originally I had in mind that she would be more Dolores Umbridge. But yeah, actually, I think I quite like to think I'm a bit sort of McGonagallish, certainly.
I'd like to hear about how the producers help you develop that character, because I'm sure you come into it not really knowing what they have in mind, and they sort of
Yeah,
guide you towards what they have in mind. How did that process play out?
I think at first I was sort of just simply trying to be extremely intimidating. But very early on, I can remember the our executive producer at the time, who is now our managing director, and he's from Northern Ireland. And I remember him just walking past and pointing at me and saying, "You are making me laugh so much." And I thought, "Oh, that's good." I thought, yeah, actually, yeah, I want to be funny. So I sort of continued to be intimidating, but try to be funny. Tony Hightower, whom I'm sure you know, once said of me, the thing about you is you always let it be known that you're in on the joke. And I think that is what I do. Honestly, I'd rather be considered funny than almost anything else. I've loved comedy since I was a child, and I'd love a chance to do more of it. Yeah, I don't remember them really giving me much of a steer. They seemed okay with what I was doing from the start. I guess if they hadn't been okay with it, then they probably would have said so.
Sure. And as a viewer of The Chase, and I've been watching the show through less than legal means for years over here in America, but that is one of the things that comes across to me as something that differentiates the original British version of the show from the American version of the show, which I was a contestant on in season one, and it's just some of the other versions that. There are these characters that serve to intimidate, and as far as the show is concerned, they want to take the contestants' money and send them home. But at the end of the day, the respect comes through. Whereas I think
absolutely.
I think on similar American shows, they play that conflict to a fault, to the point where they're almost unlikable. And I don't know that mutual respect comes through on.
Yeah,
I'm speaking about the American version in particular. Yeah,
sure, I know that. I feel like we want to beat them, obviously, but sometimes there are people who are just so nervous and timid, and you can see because we have them standing up, whereas we're just sitting down, and I can see their knees shaking. And there are times when, for example, three people have been knocked out, and just one very timid teenage girl has got through to the end, and she looks like she's going to cry. And I say to her, look, you are the one that got through. The rest of them, I knocked out, but I couldn't catch you. So that's something you've accomplished. You actually just simply you don't want them to disintegrate. You want them to make it a good final chase. I want to win, but, I want it to be a good battle.
Absolutely. Well, you must have been nervous on Mastermind. I think there is probably no more intimidating quiz show than Mastermind.
I actually, what my recollection is, I was a lot less nervous than people expect you to be. The thing about Mastermind, you cannot see the audience. The lights go down, and there's all this creepy music and everything. But the thing is, because the lights go down, you can't see the audience. You don't think about how many people are watching you on TV, and it was millions in its heyday. All you think about is there's this bright light. It's like there's a tunnel between you and the man at the end of it, who is a nice, friendly bloke whom you've seen on TV, and he's very agreeable and avuncular, and he's about to spend 2 minutes talking to you about something you're really interested in. So I found, I think he has said this himself. This is the late Magnus Magnusson we're talking about, but he said. Right. It gives everyone the impression that it's a sort of gladiatorial contest, but what the contestants know is they're far less scared than you think they are. I just remember when I watched it back, I was surprised actually by the number of things that I got wrong. So perhaps I was more nervous than I realized. But I didn't feel it at the time. I was just like, oh, yeah, we're going to chat about something that interests me.
It's actually amazing to feel that way on a show like that. Did you have anything in your life prior that might have foreshadowed an interest in entertaining or being funny? Were you into theater when you were in school? You were a class clown? Anything like that might have, again,
When I was in school, when I was in primary school, we did some plays. I remember one year we did The Wizard of Oz, and I was the Scarecrow. And the guy who played the Cowardly Lion actually grew up to become an actor. He was in Evita, where he actually got to dance with Madonna. So I'd done a bit of acting, and I do remember my very first scene where I'm standing there being the Scarecrow, and and then I have to say a line, and then I have to, while Dorothy isn't looking, I have to change my posture. And I did it, and the audience laughed, and I thought, I didn't realize that was funny. Oh, excellent! Oh, I like that sound. But I did some acting at senior school as well, and also some singing. But then when I went to uni, I tried out for the drama club and didn't get in, and just thought, oh well, obviously I'm not intended to do this. I mean, it was a small school, and I may have been quite good there, but this is a big university full of talented people, and clearly I'm not good enough. But I had, I had enjoyed standing in front of an audience doing something if I knew I could do it well, not if I wasn't sure about it, of course. And in the 90s, on a couple of occasions, I was on, I don't know if you know about a British radio quiz called Brain of Britain.
I do. I'm familiar. Sure.
Yeah, good. Well, I'd done that. I remember doing it for the first time in 1993. And then, everything goes quiet and the music starts. And I thought, ooh, I feel nervous. Wait a minute. Do I actually feel nervous? No, I feel excited and I feel focused. I don't feel nervous. And I won that heat. I don't know why, but I'm good at not getting terrified during quizzes.
That's a great skill to have, especially as a game show contestant, because that's a great point that you hit on. That, and I felt this a few times as well, because I've been fortunate enough to have been a contestant on a few shows, and I think that the feeling of anxiety or nervousness in that moment is easily confused for excitement. And I do look back on some of those experiences and remember that I don't know that I was nervous. I mean, I'm not gonna pass out. I'm not gonna embarrass myself. This is a kind of TV that I love. I think this is going to go well. I think I'm just thrilled to be here and borderline anxious to see the result. Am I going to win? How is this going to go? But it's the most positive thing. There is no negativity involved in that nervousness. It's just it's just so exciting.
Yes.
And let's backtrack for a minute. What role did game shows play in your life growing up? Were you a fan of that type of television? I know that. The UK has so many different game shows. Even today, just such a rich history of TV quiz and that kind of TV in general. What did that mean to you?
It's awful of me, but to be honest, they weren't massively important to me growing up. The sort of the grown-up ones like the Generation Game and so on, where you didn't actually win money. I've never in my life won money on a game show. And the things like Generation Game, you won, you might be lucky enough to win a speedboat or something. And I'm like, well, what good would that be to me? I live in London. I'm nowhere near a river.
Sure.
And I think my mother was sort of always rather snooty about things like that. My mother, what I've come to realize is she had a very pushy mother herself. That was the horrible grandmother I was talking about.
Right.
And because she'd had such a pushy mother, she was determined not to be a pushy mother. And I think she may have sort of slightly taken it too far the other way, because I always got the feeling that she didn't want me to compete or win prizes or, even try out for prizes and so on. So I used not to tell her if I'd gone in for anything until the results were already out. I remember that there used to be a show in Britain called Ask the Family, which was one mum, one dad, two children no more than 5 years apart. And there had to be, one of them had to be at least 11 and the other one couldn't be more than 16 or something like that. Anyway, my brother and I are 5 years apart, and there was only 1 year when we could have done it, and my mother wouldn't. And I remember being furious. I thought it was my dad that was being stubborn, but it turned out long time later, my dad would have been fine with it. It was my mum that wouldn't do it. And I always found that frustrating. I found it frustrating that after I'd been on Mastermind, the result of me being on Mastermind was that the people who lived in her village invited her to join their local pub quiz team. Nobody invited me to join the local pub quiz team. It was just my mum. So she played in that for a few years. Yeah, I did rather feel it would have been nice if my mum had encouraged me to do more such things. I would have liked to go in for another TV show called Top of the Form, which was all kids from the same school, but our school never actually did that. So the things I would have liked to do were never actually possible, and most of the other game shows I didn't especially want to do.
In those early days, was the quizzing scene as male dominated as it seems in retrospect? It seems like there wasn't a whole lot of room for a very intelligent woman to come in and make moves in that sphere. Were you one of the first to do that?
I don't really know. It certainly is very male dominated. It's less male dominated now than it was, but still very much so. But the thing is, I have never been someone who is intimidated by being the only woman in a room. I mean, I don't tend to notice. At the world, we've had done the recent World Championships, and in the British end, I remember one woman leaving and saying to me, "Goodbye. There are only two ladies here." And I thought, "Oh, were there?" I mean, I didn't notice we were the only two women in the room. I don't care. Most of my friends are blokes anyway. So it may well be, but I was brought up. I mean, the horrible grandmother, she was horrible, but her mother had campaigned for votes for women. Um, and she and her sisters had gone to university. Her elder sister became a doctor, and this is like more than 100 years ago. And my mother went to university, and I did. So in our family, it was kind of taken for granted. Women are going to be smart, and if the men think this is unusual, well, that's too bad for them. I was just brought up, as I say, I was brought up by my mother to believe that I shouldn't try too hard at anything. But at the same time, I had this family history of, well, naturally, of course, women are going to accomplish things. And of course, they're not even going to think terribly hard about the fact that they are women and that they are surrounded by men, because that's just how it is.
I'm thinking about that era of quiz, of game shows, and I'm thinking about, and I guess even to the present day, when I think of female quizzing in the UK, there are two names that come to mind. There's your name, and there's
Mhm.
also Daphne Fowler, who I
Yeah,
wonder if you've ever, yeah, I wonder if you've ever had any run. I mean, I know she was on Eggheads, and she's been on just about every show that could have a winner. She has won it. It feels like at some point.
that's right. I have met her because I don't know her at all well. I had met her, I think, a couple of times before we met on Are You an Egghead? She's about a generation older than me. And yes, in her heyday, she was tremendous. She was really one of the, I was going to say she was one of the first women to sort of make an impact. But the thing is, people forget when Mastermind started in, what was it, 1972? The first 3 years of its existence, all the first three champions were female, and nobody even thought that was particularly remarkable. So Daphne, yes, she was known as a really good quizzer. I suppose one slight issue I have is, like I say, she's from an earlier generation, and I think she's actually on record as saying that she was taught to kind of, talk herself down and be modest. And so she always had a tendency to pretend she didn't know an answer when she actually did, because she thought that this was what women were supposed to do. And I remember reading this and thinking, ick, I've never done that. I mean, obviously, it's not her fault, it's the way she was brought up. But thinking to myself, I have never done that. I never will do that. I have not been taught to pretend that women are shy little things who need men's help. So I don't know, I don't feel from that point of view she was a tremendous role model. But like I say, it's not really something she could have helped. When I say when I say that the governess was originally going to be different, I had in mind that she would be less assertive and more, like I say, more sort of, well, to be honest, more sort of creepy, like Dolores Umbridge. And I have to say that Daphne was one of the kind of people that I was thinking of basing her on. And, and she was going to be sort of terribly sweet and nice, and then actually turned out to be a killer. And then a friend of mine said, you won't be able to keep that up. So, like I say, I switched from Umbridge to McGonagall.
It's interesting how that bull shark kind of character doesn't really translate well to TV day in, day out. Because at some point, the audience would say, okay, we know that you know everything. We know that you're really good at this. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, increasingly, as I say, I do like to be funny. I mean, around about series 4, the producers decided that they wanted a bit more certainty about what we were going to say when we went out there. And they know, for one thing, I have a tendency to swear. I mean, I understand about not swearing on daytime TV, but, they were afraid that I might say something inappropriate. And they actually brought in a writer. And I remember being terribly resentful about this. Why do we need a writer? And actually, I love him. He's brilliant. And so I have to say, most of my lines, when I first come out, and I sit down and I say, hello, contestant, and then I deliver a line, that's almost certainly been written for me by Adam. And I just try and make it sound spontaneous. I mean, a lot of people do think it sounds spontaneous, which is excellent. But Adam always says the two people he most likes writing for are me and Victoria Coren Mitchell on Only Connect. And he said in both cases, he can hear our voices. He can hear how we will deliver the line. So, I'd like to think I've got funnier. I like to be funny. And obviously, I ought to be pretending they're my own lines. But actually, they're mostly Adam's.
It seems like it's a great time to be funny on television in the UK because there are so many different outlets for comedy. There's so much, it seems like there's so much stand-up coming out of the UK. There's so many panel shows and just opportunities for funny people to be funny, especially in the context of playing a game. Any interest in doing that kind of panel show? I mean, I think of QI, I think of Would I Lie to You? Any interest in those?
I'd be happy to do either of those. The problem is still that commissioning editors think of me as, they primarily look at me and they think, well, she's jolly clever. So, I get commissioners saying to me, would you be interested in fronting a program about the Six Wives of Henry VIII? And I'm like, well, honestly, I would rather go on Saturday Night Takeaway dressed as a hamburger and having a sword fight, which I actually have done in the last few months. And it was brilliant. I mean, that's the sort of thing I want to do. I love, going on silly shows like Celebrity Juice, where I had to do a couple of impressions, and I was told who the impressions were of, and the host had to guess who I was doing an impression of. And I did, let me think, Liam Gallagher and Lorraine Kelly. Liam Gallagher is from Manchester, where I've lived for 40 years, and Lorraine Kelly is Scottish, like my mother and my grandmother. So I could do the accents okay. And I recently completed work on a little short film, which is going to be released soon, called Exorcising Barry. And the star-stroke co-producer dropped me a note saying, I genuinely don't think any of us expected you to be as well-versed in comic timing as you were. So I was very pleased with that. And I hope everyone will see it when it comes out.
I hope so too. I would love to see it.
Well, I think they're going to be sending it around to festivals and things like that.
Oh, wonderful. Well, good luck in advance.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Who taught you comic timing? Was it somebody in your life, or was it somebody in the world of entertainment that you watched?
No, I didn't. I didn't realize I had comic timing. I'd always been told, if you want to be funny, you have to have brilliant timing. And I thought, I don't know what this brilliant comic timing is, but I must assume I haven't got it. Because my mother sort of, in her sort of trying to not encourage me to work too hard, basically made me feel I couldn't do anything. So whenever I heard, there is this particular thing for which you need this particular talent, I always assumed I wouldn't have that talent. But I mean, I have always loved comedy. I've always loved watching comedy. As a child, I used to love reading funny books. I mean, in primary school, I was reading James Thurber. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't get the jokes, but I can see where the jokes are. I just can't quite yet figure out why they're funny, but I mean, I suppose now I was thinking I can understand his timing. But I always loved, I mean, I have a passion for the Marx Brothers. The second time I did Mastermind, my special subject was life and career of Charlie Chaplin. Yes, I am fascinated by comedy, by comedians, and how they do what they do. And my all-time favorite film is Blazing Saddles. I love anything to do with Mel Brooks.
Oh, he is absolute genius.
Oh my God, isn't he just? Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know if you know, but Jeopardy here in America, back when it was a daytime game show in the 60s, 70s, for their 2000s episode, the special guest that they hadn't announced until the episode was Mel Brooks as the 2,000-year-old man.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it was wonderful. Seeing him do the 2,000-year-old man bit with the host of Jeopardy was surreal, and it that beautiful. And it'll never happen again, but it was just so wonderful to see. I think that was in 72.
He himself said that the great thing about his partner, Carl Reiner, on that act was that Reiner would come up with amazing things on the fly. He would just suddenly come up with absolutely bonkers ideas, and Brooks would just have to run with it. And I'm reminded of something. It's been attributed to Bud Abbott, but I don't know if it was Bud Abbott who said it, or it might have been Harvey Korman in that TV movie about Abbott and Costello. But I remember the line, "The straight man is the rhythm section." And I remembered that when I do panto, because, it's kind of a Christmas tradition in the UK to do panto. And if you're someone known from TV, it can be quite decently paid. Sure. And I remember this last Christmas just gone, I had to do a kind of crosstalk routine with the main comedian in the show. And I remember thinking, it's my job to keep the rhythm going. I'm the one who I can't pause because I'm delivering the setup lines, and then all he has to do is remember the joke. So it was absolutely the most taxing bit of the entire show. But I was very proud I managed to do it.
Let's talk about swearing.
Yeah.
Because I have heard and I've read that swearing is a sign of great intelligence in humans.
Oh, jolly good.
That the more intelligent a person is, the more likely they are to have colorful language. And I find that in my day-to-day, not that I consider myself to be any level of intelligent, but I swear a lot. Good. Sometimes there's no better way to get an idea across. Sometimes
it is the right word. Yes,
I mean that fucking emphasis.
Absolutely. I mean, some people say, "Oh, it's a sign of a limited vocabulary." I'm like, no, I have an enormous vocabulary, and fuck is one of the words in it. I mean, plinth is another word in it. I like that word. My favorite word is flamingo, but plinth is a good word as well.
Plinth is a good word.
It is.
That is a good word. Define plinth for me.
It is a small raised dais, large enough to have a small a shield or some sort of an award. I have 3 awards sitting on the windowsill to my left. And yes, actually, they're all under the plinth.
It's a great countdown word.
It's a good countdown word, yes. I've actually done countdown. I've been in Dictionary Corner. And the only reason I haven't gone back is you have to have 5 anecdotes, and I think I used up my 5 anecdotes. So I'm going to have to come up with 5 more before I can go back.
Oh, do they not help you with that? Like the writers or anyone on staff?
They help you with the words and the sums, although sitting next to Susie Dent, I mean, she comes up with the word before we hear it in our ears from the producers. But you actually have to come up with your own anecdotes. So I had to do those.
In the few game shows that I've been on where there's a section of contestant interview, there's always extensive pre-interview for that, where they'll talk to you for half an hour and just kind of get notes so that part of the show goes well. Which I'm always thankful for. Sometimes, and maybe in this role, it might be funny to hear, but I sometimes have trouble talking about myself. So it was great. It was nice in that context to have some guidance for that process.
Yes, when I've mentioned our writer Adam, when they've done the what's called the research chat with the contestants, they will type up a list of notes for Adam so that Adam knows what stuff came up in the chat, and he will then write about 5 different lines for each contestant. But he's also there backstage with us just in case Bradley goes completely off-piste and asks about a bunch of other stuff that we hadn't even thought about. And then suddenly we might have to do some massive rewrites.
I'm fascinated by the interplay between intelligence and comedy because it feels like there are so many intelligent people who are also very funny. And then by the same token, there are people who are funny for a living that are also massively intelligent. I think that the record for high score in Celebrity Jeopardy, if I'm not mistaken, is owned by Andy Richter, who was Conan O'Brien's sidekick when he had a late night talk show for however many years. And I think about stand-up comedians, appearing on shows like that and just completely smoking the competition. Because again, I think that a sense of humor, in addition to swearing, a sense of humor is just such a wonderful green flag in terms of knowing whether somebody is intelligent. It takes a smart person to be truly funny, I think, to have that timing for it to come naturally.
The late, absolutely brilliant John Sessions said of humor, he said, it's just common sense dancing. And I think one thing is, in the early 80s, comedy in Britain got a lot more intelligent. And one reason for that was that there were a lot of youngsters going to drama courses at university who were, very well qualified to be at university. And they wanted to get their equity cards, equity being the actors union. And there was always this catch-22. You couldn't get an equity card unless you already had a bit of experience under your belt. But it was very difficult to get experience if you were not an equity member. But one thing you could do without being an equity member was stand-up comedy. And as a result, a lot of drama students in the early 80s turned to stand-up comedy and found that they were good at it. There's a load of comedians who came out of Manchester University, people like Ben Elton, people like the people who were in The Young Ones, the whole Comic Strip Presents, all those people. A lot of them had come out of Manchester University and they'd come out of drama courses, and that was how they got into comedy. But they had to be smart enough to get to university in the first place.
In your mind, as somebody who has witnessed so many contestants on The Chase walk in, walk out, what's the worst thing a contestant can do for themselves to ensure that they will not have a good experience, that they will not win on The Chase?
Losing focus, getting into what we call, from Mastermind, we call it the pass spiral. Get a question wrong in the cash builder and it bothers you and you're still thinking about it. You're going, oh, why did I do that? And you don't quite listen to the next question and you miss that one and you do the same thing. And then you just start missing all the questions. Doing the same thing in the final chase, getting yourself confused and nervous and failing to remember that you are one of a team and you need to you can't read minds, but, learn to read a bit of body language and just sense when the people on either side of you do know the answer, they're just a little slower to the buzzer than you are, and be aware they're about to get to the answer, and then, don't just buzz in and pass. But at the same time, don't go too slowly. It's about keeping focus. And one reason we win so many final chases is that we've got a lot of experience of maintaining focus. You don't see how many times a final chase may actually have to be stopped in the middle because he misread something or because he failed to accept an answer that he should have accepted. And so they will stop it and then they'll wind the tape back and he will continue. And I know when that happens, I'm sitting backstage watching the contestants and I'm thinking, you must now stay focused, and just go right in with the next question and do not think about anything that's just happened. But a lot of them really aren't that great at that.
I think that it's easy for a certain type of person to fall into that spiral, to realize they got something wrong, and then, like you said, sort of harp on that failure and have that failure kind of spill over into the next opportunity.
Yeah.
But you personally don't seem like the kind of person that is hard on themselves when they don't know the answer to something.
I can do that. I've been known to spiral a little bit. I've been known to get pushed back on something and really beat myself up about it and not quite focus on the next question because of that. It's not happened often, but it can happen. I just simply have had to learn to don't think about it, throw it away, just listen to the next question, and just do that. And it's practice and experience and knowing that it's what you've got to do.
I was talking to someone who was on the very first episode of Jeopardy here in America, and the first version of the show, contestants were sitting down. In this one, I don't know what the reason behind it was, but contestants are now standing up. Mm-hmm. Do you think you would do as well as a chaser if you were not sitting down, if you were standing up? Does your posture have anything to do with your performance in a quiz?
I like sitting down. I'm very much into sitting down. I am someone who sits down for most of my life. I'm very unfit. I really probably do not get my steps in. I would just simply rather sit down. It means I don't have to focus on, do I feel the need to shuffle my feet? Does my back hurt? I would rather be sitting down. As I say, right from the start, I noticed we make the contestants stand up, and I can sometimes see their legs shaking. And I always think, I'm so glad they're standing up and I'm sitting down.
Sure. I think that's great for the show, because I think you sitting down also gives that air of
I'm in charge.
It almost seems regal. Right. It's your throne, and the fact that you're sitting above everybody, I think, plays into it as well. But yeah, the fact that the contestants are standing,
yes,
right. I mean, you get those moments where you can see that, like you said, the body language. You can see so much, and you can tell so much from somebody by the way they appear on, in front of the chaser.
And just, the evil overlord, when he's stroking the cat, the cat is sitting on his lap. It doesn't really work if he's, standing up holding the cat, because the cat's probably then going to try and escape, and it's not very authoritative. I should have a cat.
Has that ever crossed the mind of any of the producers? That feels like such a wonderful sort of affectation to have I'm an official show cat.
I think it would probably misbehave even if we were sitting down. There was an occasion a few months ago when a pigeon got into the studio, and it obviously been there for about sort of 3 days. And we had terrible difficulty figuring out where it was. Every now and then it would suddenly start cooing, and it would be on the soundtrack. And people were racing around trying to get rid of it. And some wit put, do you remember the theme tune from Stop the Pigeon? Or whatever it was, Catch the Pigeon, on the sound system. We were all listening to it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
But yeah,
the perils of making television.
Yeah, animals in the studio. Yeah, not really great. I mean, we have had blind contestants who have brought service dogs along, and they've been tremendously well behaved, because that's what service dogs are obviously trained to do. But you can't really train a cat to do anything, and you certainly couldn't train this pigeon to do anything.
Oh, I know it. I have 2.5 cats. One of them is about 20 pounds. And good luck teaching them to follow any sort of command.
Oh, yeah.
You reminded me of something, and I might edit this out, and I might not. But a few years ago, a creative partner of mine and I had the opportunity to pitch a format for a quiz show here. And we filmed our own pilot in a sort of warehouse in Philadelphia. We got cameras, we got contestants, we built a little makeshift set, we had the whole thing. It was going really well. In the middle of, we'll say, the second round, and I was hosting the run through. In the middle of round 2, a man entered the warehouse no shirt, no shoes, wearing shorts, came up to me on the set and said, "Hey, I got your mail," and handed me the mail from the mailbox at the warehouse. And I can't stress enough that this was during the show. Imagine if the postman walked up to Bradley in the middle of an individual chase. It was a comparable moment to that, and it was just so surreal to me. And I just went, "Oh, thank you so much." And of course, what you do is you start opening the envelopes.
Yeah, Brad would start opening it, and he'd start reading them out, and he'd start making up, who they were from and what they said.
That's right. I think that's what I did. I went, Bill,
yeah.
Bill, yeah. That's all you can do. But it also highlights, an inherent lack of security for that building. So we learned a lot.
Yeah. It's. I don't really wish something like that would happen, but yes.
Yeah,
I mean, we always love it when
on TV is wonderful. Sure.
Mm.
So,
we love
in closing, Anne, I would love to know if you have had any personal insight into the role that you play in terms of maybe a younger female aspiring quizzer, or somebody aspiring to be on television, aspiring to get on a game show. Have you had any personal insight into the role that you have as sort of someone to look up to in that regard? Have you ever been approached by people who, just look at your performance as something to be inspired by? Because I think that there's room for that. I think that, again, there are so few, so few strong female quizzers out there. And I'm sure there are so many that we just don't know of. I would love to know about the insight that you received into that.
Yeah, I get a certain amount of that, certainly. I do get young women saying that they want to be chasers. And that they want to take part in sort of major quizzes. And I'm like, well, honestly, guys, it's absolutely open to you. And then they say, oh, but I have suffered from anxiety, and I that would have to be accommodated. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think they're going to accommodate that. You need to deal with that. But absolutely. I mean, I would love it if more female quizzes came along. I mean, a few years ago, one started seeing the name Victoria Gross turning up in the list of contestants in the World Championships. And last year she came second, and I was like, wow. And this year she won the World Championships. So we have now got a female world quiz champion. She's from Pittsburgh, I believe.
And she's been on this show as well. She was a joy.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure she will be more, I mean, as she's also a chaser on the US Chase, she will probably be more of a role model to the American female quizzers. And obviously it would be fantastic if more women got into quizzing generally. I would very much be in favor of that.
In your mind, how does that happen? I don't want to ask this. How does the quizzing world court female players? Is there something specific that you think maybe needs to be done?
The trouble is, I don't sort of terribly believe in courting people. I think, you need to be the kind of person who doesn't need to wait for an invitation. I mean, okay, I can talk because when I was at university, I tried out for the University Challenge team. And I was kind of a bit timid about offering answers. And as a result, I was only the reserve. Although I've always said actually being the reserve on the University Challenge team is brilliant, because you get all the same perks everyone else does. You don't have to do any work, and everybody feels sorry for you. So that's actually rather excellent. But, yes, I've known what it is like to feel a bit timid about that. I don't, however, think that was simply because I was female. As I say, I was brought up not to think in terms of, oh, I need to see other women doing this before I can do it. I was brought up in terms of, I'm going to be the first woman to do X, Y, and Z. So maybe we just need to encourage more people to say, don't follow the path, go where there is no path and leave a trail. I forget who said that. But maybe in general, we need to encourage girls to, try and be the first woman who does something rather than waiting to see other people doing it.
Tell Us About Yourself, Conversations with Game Show Contestants, is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Christian Carrion, from my studio in beautiful downtown Lancaster City, Pennsylvania. Co-executive producer Cory Anotado. Researcher Chuck Donegan. This has been a production of BuzzerBlog, the most popular game show website in the world, in partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. For more information, visit museumofplay.org. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Christian Carrion. Good night. Tell Us About Yourself is sponsored by bonusround.ca, streaming Canada's classic game shows on demand. Dive into the golden age of television with thousands of episodes of Canadian series that defined an era from anywhere in the world, all for just $1.99 a month. From iconic shows like Let's Make a Deal and Definition to cult classics like Bumper Stumpers and The Mad Dash, bonusround.ca brings you timeless entertainment that's fun, enlightening, and affordable. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, relive the magic of Canadian television history. Subscribe now at bonusround.ca for $1.99 and turn every night into Game Show Night. By Game Show Forensics. Join host Robert McKee and his crack team of forensic game show scientists as they take you on the deepest dives imaginable in a quest to analyze the most detailed minutiae of game shows nobody else dares to, or cares to, investigate. Nothing is too whimsical for examination, no semantics too absurd for the research extremists at GameShowForensics.com. Parental discretion is advised. And by The Inn at Leola Village. Nestled in the heart of picturesque Pennsylvania, The Inn at Leola Village is a sanctuary of luxury and relaxation. Indulge in the timeless beauty of their historic suites, each meticulously designed to transport you to a bygone era of elegance and grace. Experience the culinary delights of their award-winning Italian restaurant, where every dish is a masterpiece crafted from the finest local ingredients. From romantic getaways to corporate retreats, the Inn at Leola Village offers a haven for every occasion. Unwind at the spa, stroll through the lush gardens, and let the stress of everyday life melt away. Make your reservation today at theinnatleolavillage.com or call the front desk at area code 717-656-7002. The Inn at Leola Village, an oasis of luxury.